What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? James 2:14. But someone will say, "You have faith, I have deeds." Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. James 2:18.
Have you ever come across one of those puzzles in the Bible that just seems impossible to solve? Well, one of the biggest ones for sure is the relationship between faith and works. It's this massive debate that really boils down to two powerful and seemingly contradictory statements from two giants of the faith. And how you piece this puzzle together, well, it's shaped 2,000 years of history. So on one side, you've got the Apostle Paul. In his letter to the Romans, he drops his absolute bombshell. For centuries, this has been the cornerstone for understanding that salvation is a gift. It's received through faith, and faith alone. It's not something you can earn, no matter how hard you try. It's all about grace.
But then, just when you think you've got it figured out, you flip over to the letter from the Apostle James and you get this. It feels like the complete opposite, doesn't it? He says a person is considered righteous by what they do, and then he adds that little kicker, and not by faith alone.
Okay, so which one is it? Is the Bible contradicting itself on one of the most important topics imaginable? Is it faith or is it works? To solve this, we really have to dig a little deeper, especially into what James was so fired up about.
You see, the key to unlocking this whole thing isn't to put Paul and James in a boxing ring. It's to understand the very specific problem that James was trying to solve. He was warning his readers about a kind of belief that he called dead faith.
So what is this dead faith? Well, James says it's a belief that's all talk. It's just agreeing with a set of facts in your head, but it never ever translates into how you actually live your life. And his conclusion is pretty blunt. That kind of faith is totally useless. It can't save anyone. It's a faith that costs you nothing, and so it's worth nothing. And he gives this incredibly practical, all-too-human example. He says, imagine you see someone who is desperate. They have no food, no proper clothes, and you just say to them, "Hey, I'll be thinking of you. Go in peace, hope you get warm and find some food." But then you do absolutely nothing to help them. What good are your words? James is saying a faith that acts like that is just as empty.
So James is basically drawing a huge line in the sand. He's making it crystal clear that just nodding along and saying, "Yeah, I believe that," isn't what true faith is. He even points out that demons have an intellectual belief in God. They know he exists. But that's not a saving faith, because it's not built on trust or love. It's just acknowledging a fact. True living faith? Well, that's something else entirely.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Because to prove their points, which, remember, sound totally different, both Paul and James turn to the exact same person, the patriarch Abraham. He becomes the key witness who helps us crack this whole case.
And the solution clicks into place when you realize they aren't talking about the same moment. They're actually highlighting two different stages in Abraham's life, separated by many, many years. First, you have his initial justification, where he just believes a promise. And then, way later, you have that faith being put to the ultimate test. Okay, so this first moment, this is Paul's go-to example. God promises Abraham that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. And what does Abraham do to earn this? Nothing. He performs no great work. He simply believes God. And right there, the text says that belief, and that belief alone, was credited to him as righteousness. That's justification by faith, plain and simple. But then, and this is the moment James zeroes in on, we jump forward decades. God tests Abraham with the most gut-wrenching command imaginable, to offer up his own son Isaac. Now, Abraham's willingness to obey didn't earn him a standing with God. He already had that. What it did was prove that the faith he'd had all along was real. It was the action that showed the world his faith was alive and kicking. And right here, this is where all the puzzle pieces just start to fall perfectly into place. See, Paul and James weren't having a debate with each other across the centuries. They were both pastors, using the same story to solve two completely different problems they saw in their own communities.
This comparison really lays it all out. Paul's focus, that initial justification, the moment you're made right with God. But James, his focus is on the final vindication, the proof that your faith is genuine. Paul was writing to legalists, people who were trying to earn their salvation by following all the rules. But James was writing to hypocrites, people who claim to have faith, but whose lives showed zero evidence of it.
You have to remember Paul's message was absolutely revolutionary at the time. He was fighting this deeply ingrained idea of legalism, this notion that you can climb a ladder of good deeds all the way to God. And he used Abraham's story from Genesis 15 to prove that no, Abraham was accepted by God through faith long before he performed any of his most famous works.
James, on the other hand, was fighting the total opposite error. You could call it cheap grace. It's this dangerous idea that if you're saved by faith, then it doesn't really matter how you live your life. So James uses that intense story from Genesis 22 to basically shout from the rooftops, no way. If your faith is real, it will always show up in what you do.
So, how do we hold all of this together? How does it become one single, coherent truth? Well, James leaves us with this powerful and, honestly, unforgettable analogy that just perfectly ties it all together. He says that a faith that produces nothing, no action, no change in your life, no deeds of love or mercy, it's like
A body without a spirit. I mean, think about that. It's a corpse. It's lifeless. You can't separate a body from a spirit and still have a living person, right? Well, James is saying it's the exact same thing with faith and works. You can't separate true faith from the actions that naturally flow out of it. The works don't create the life, but they are the undeniable evidence that life is there in the first place.
So to bring it all home, true faith is really a complete journey. It all starts with God's grace, which we receive by faith alone. That's Paul's essential point. But then, that faith is proven to be the real deal through our actions. That's James's crucial point. It gets stronger and more mature as it's tested, and in the end, it's this living, active faith that is vindicated.
So it turns out the puzzle isn't a contradiction at all. It's just two essential parts of one profound truth. And it challenges all of us to move past just saying the right words and to ask a much, much deeper question. The real takeaway is this: if your faith is truly alive, what does it actually look like?